Okay, so if you're like me, you heard that you're supposed to always shoot RAW. Like that's what you do. You shoot in RAW because that's better and that's what you do. You don't shoot JPEG. That's idiots shoot JPEG, right? Yeah, so that's what I did. For my whole entire life, I shot RAW. I've been doing it for over a decade. That's what you do, right? And why is because it's awesome. RAW is magnificent. You have all this data and you can push and pull things, you get the dynamic range and you can change white balance, all that it's wonderful. I totally love it. But only recently I started questioning that. This is where the lesson comes in is perhaps you don't actually always have to shoot RAW. Let's say you go through all of your photos, you're gonna find a lot of photos, probably the majority of them don't really matter too much, whether they're things for sale on Craigslist, eBay, some stupid thing that you took a photo of while you were camping that's pretty cool, but do you really need that RAW file? Are you gonna go back and edit the picture of a weird frog you took while you were on a camping trip? Doubtful. And it's absolutely stupid to think that you always should shoot RAW. This rule, wherever it came from, I think is misleading. It's incorrect. Now, why I say this is incorrect is because you just don't always need to shoot RAW. You can shoot JPEG for majority of the things because the majority of the things you're just sharing. They aren't things that matter. So for example, something you just throw into Instagram stories, but you wanted the control of the camera, things that you don't revisit in an edit, you just share it once and that's it. And it saves so much space on your hard drive. All right, hold on one second because that was a really major thing, how much hard drive space you will save. That's actually one of the catalysts for me even starting this was just hard drive space. But since it's such a large topic and I have so much to say on it, I'm dedicating a whole video on it and how to do it, how to optimize your media, all that stuff. But it is a massive point, but we're just not going to include it in this just because it's just too dense of a topic. Now, why I say this doesn't matter is because most of the times the photos don't matter. They are things that you want to share, but you're probably never going to revisit them, as I was mentioning. You're not going to go back and take a picture of your food that you took on your DSLR, shared it to Instagram. You're not gonna go back to that. Maybe you do wanna actually save the picture of the weird lobster dinner that you had or something, but do you really need that RAW file? It doesn't make sense. So this rule of always shooting RAW is just absolutely ridiculous. It drives me insane, rules in general. I think they're really great to learn from, but you have to think about them eventually and question, why is this there? Why was it there? And if you're like me, you've done this long enough to understand, actually, you can break this rule. You don't always have to shoot RAW. Okay, so the first step in shooting JPEG sometimes, most of the time, whatever you want to say, is to just analyze what you're going to shoot. Like, think about it for a second. Like, is this an important thing? Is this just something you're sharing? Are you going to actually revisit this? Is it for a client? All that stuff, whatever. So if it's for a client and it is something that's really important, maybe a family thing, go ahead, shoot RAW. That's what I recommend. I do that myself. But if it's something that you're just sharing to social or you're just taking pictures because you feel like taking pictures of stuff, you're just going for a walk, whatever, yeah, shoot JPEG. So that's the first thing. Shoot when it doesn't really matter, which I think most of the time it doesn't. Now, another really great reason to shoot JPEG is when you're just experimenting and, just learning some things, learning composition, something like that. And getting it right in camera is an art. And the old film photographers usually are better than our current digital ones in just getting it right and having a good ratio of photos that they actually edit and shoot, all that business. So it's good to take from that, trying to get it right in camera. It's just, in general, going to help your whole workflow in the end if you do push yourself to get it right. Now, here's one thing to consider when thinking about shooting in JPEG is there's this thing called the Pratfall Effect, which basically means that when you share imperfections and blunders and things like that, things that make you feel a little bit more human, actually people tend to relate to you quite a bit. So yes, it's wonderful to have a perfect portfolio and everything in your feed is flawless, that's wonderful. But not everything you have to share should be and is helpful to be perfect. In fact, it pushes people away. It may seem like a good idea to be perfect and everything, but it actually isn't helpful. A lot of times people want you to be relatable. When you start shooting JPEG, you really learn a lot about the camera, things that you didn't even know that you needed to learn or know, things about the color space, the settings, the detailed things about the camera, of what happens when things get baked in right from the debayer of the sensor or whatever technical crap happens. You really get to know it, which means when you shoot RAW or film however way you like to film, you really know ins and outs, and it actually improves your filming. I promise you this. You will learn something absolutely if you keep shooting JPEG. And more importantly is to question everything. You should always be questioning things. Eventually, you may agree to it. You may find that you only agree to it partially. Say for this specific example, I love shooting RAW. It's great. I do sometimes, not all the time. And to push back against these rules that we're told and we're taught, they may not work for you. I'm teaching you something, I'm telling you to shoot JPEG. And you may say, well, that's not for me. Great, that's cool, that's deciding. But you didn't try it, right? So that's a little different than what I'm saying here. The difference is that you have to kind of question things that you've already been taught and that you've already been living. The life you've already been living by the way that you've been told you're supposed to. Those are the things that you question. Question how you behave, what you're supposed to do technically, all of these things. These are massive things, and why you would want to do this is, one, as an artist, as a creative, it actually expands your brain and your creative output. You end up making new work that surprises you and really elevates your whole craft altogether. And then as a person, you grow, you get wiser. You start to see things a little bit more. You can understand where other people are coming from. Also, I found for myself that I tend to be more open to trying new things and things that are totally out of my comfort zone, which again helps me grow as a person. So as far as how I actually shoot the JPEGs on my Sony a7S or a7 III, it's a couple things that I've found. First thing, I would keep it as standard. That's how I started doing it. You can do a lot. But I was struggling handling the exposure a little bit too much in camera. It was becoming cumbersome to a degree. So I switched it up to shoot in movie mode and movie color profile, which allowed me access to the picture profiles in my Sony. And what that did was gave me the control of the details and make it a semi-flat to a degree, so that if I edit it, I only touch it just a little bit, or I don't have to edit it at all. So in the end, there's a minor amount of editing if I edit it, but it's totally fine as is out of camera.